30th of June in Portugal. We've had 15 such summits, and the last summit just happened on the 8th of May, which was considered by the whole world as a watershed moment. So I think this sets the tone, and the pandemia is a condition. It's a condition that is forcing us to face the situation with new arms and new collaborations. So I would leave and start the floor immediately without wasting time, because everybody has their exigencies, but with a strong belief in what we are doing singularly and as a group around this webinar, and a lot of people who have not been able to be around. But I begin by requesting Mr. Dilip Chanoy, Secretary General of FICCI, to please make his opening remarks, sir.
Thank you, Ronnie, for all that you've done to make this possible. His Excellency, Mr. Ugo Astuto, Ambassador of the European Union to India. His Excellency, Mr. Santosh Jha, Ambassador of India to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the EU. I know that you're joining in a few minutes, but anyway. Mr. Sandro Gozzi, Member of the European Parliament and Member Delegation for Relations with India and the President of the EU-India Association. Mr. Harshvardhan Neotia, Co-Chair of the FICCI Forum of Parliamentarians and the past President, FICCI and Chairman, Ambuja Neotia Group. Mr. Peter Rimmel, Resident Representative to India for KAS. Ms. Celine Calves, Honorable Member of the French Parliament, President Indo-French Friendship Group. Ms. Lorraine Perring, Honorable Member of the European Parliament and Member Delegation for Relations with India. Mr. Michael Galler, Honorable Member of the European Parliament. Mr. Valentini, Honorable Member of the Italian Parliament. Ms. Stefania Benalia, Associate Researcher, Center for European Policy Studies. Dr. Mohan Guruswamy, Chairman and Founder, Center for Policy Alternatives. Industry representatives and dear colleagues. On behalf of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI, I extend a warm welcome and virtual greetings to the distinguished speakers, representatives of Indian and EU businesses today at this India-EU panel discussion, the future of India-EU relations, key takeaways from the India-EU Summit 2021. I would like to begin by hoping that you, your family, your colleagues, their families are all keeping well and keep safe, and hope that they continue to do so. And as we move from the present to look at a bit of the medium and long term in today's interaction, we bring back a sense of optimism and take it forward. Today's interaction is the first in our endeavor to organize a series of track 2 interactions involving elected representatives and industry to retain the momentum that has been generated by the just concluded summit for further deepening trade and economic relations between India and the EU economies. We have a long-standing partnership with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation across verticals, and I would like to welcome Mr. Peter Rimmel, Resident Representative KAS, and Mr. Pankaj Madan, Head Programs and Deputy Head India Office. I would also like to thank the EU-India Association for partnering with us for organizing this timely interaction, and our colleague, Mr. Ronnie Simon, for his support. A very special welcome to His Excellency, Mr. Ugo Astuto, Ambassador of the European Union to India. Thank you for your continued support to Indo-EU relationships. I am happy to welcome the distinguished panel of speakers who lead esteemed institutions across countries and whose great vision and initiatives in the leadership have actually built the relationship in the past, and I look forward to their continued support and leadership going forward. I would also like to acknowledge all my colleagues from various domains, including Mr. Vinit Mittal, who has joined us here. The EU and India strategic partners since 2004 represent unions of diversity, sharing values and supporting a rule-based global order centered on multilateralism. We will develop a close partnership that covers political relations, trade and investment, multilateralism, democracy, connectivity, and technology cooperation. Today's discussion should also be seen as India enters into the 75th year in 2022, putting the impetus on enhancing relations with partners like the European Union and strengthening the India-EU strategic partnership. A roadmap to 2025 is critical. Once again, a very warm welcome to the distinguished speakers who have joined us. As Ronnie said, during these exigencies and these emergencies, you have chosen to be here. We value your time and thank you very much for joining us at today's interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was a great start to set the tone for today's meeting. And I have the pleasure of now asking Mr. Neotia, Harshvardhan Neotia, who is our past president, but is an active and a very important Indian business and industrialist, to say a few words to us.
Good afternoon from India. His Excellency Ambassador Ugo Astuto, Ambassador Santosh Jha, who will join us shortly, Mr. Peter Rimmel, Mr. Sandro Gozzi, members of the Delegation for Relations with India, Mr. Dilip Chinoy, Mr. Simon, other distinguished guests here on the panel, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and a virtual greeting to all of you. It's my pleasure to add my own welcome to what Dilip has already said. FICCI, KS and EU India are really proud to host this event today. This is the first in the series of Track 2 discussions, and we hope that this will be carried forward. India-EU summit took place on the 8th of May after a gap of 8 years and rekindled the flame of India-EU friendship. Various issues were discussed that included technology, trade and investment, healthcare, in vaccine diplomacy, climate change, environment, food security, etc. And we hope that all these issues will be taken up in earnestness by the two groups as we go forward. At FICCI 2, we are organizing this interactive session after a gap. FICCI Forum of Parliamentarians has been engaging with MEPs and hosted a couple of incoming delegations. We want to intensify these exchanges. Today's discussion will engage the respective ambassadors and MEPs on their views on this revised chemistry between India and EU, what is new and what is to be taken forward on an immediate basis. This renewed solidarity would go a long way to drive economic recovery amid the COVID-19 crisis. The entire world is truly just one family. In Sanskrit, we call it Vaisudeva Kutumbakam, which is essentially that the world is one big family. And this is being realized every day by world leaders and common man alike. Help is flowing without borders, and the global playbook is being rewritten to accommodate the paradigm shift brought about by the pandemic. The generous and swift assistance from Team Europe to offer critical supplies of oxygen, ventilators, and medicines worth more than 100 million euros is truly a welcome step. That is precisely why we, as two of the largest democracies, should stay connected to build understanding between the people. Elected representatives being at the forefront of policy shaping are an important link in this chain. India and the EU have been strategic partners, but ties go much beyond. The two geographies have shared legislative relations since 1981. At a virtual meeting earlier this year, Lok Sabha Speaker Shri Om Birla, His Excellency Mr. David Sassoli, President of the European Parliament, called for parliamentary exchanges for promoting mutual understanding, shared democratic values, global concerns, and enhancing the bilateral trade and investment. At FICCI, we believe that in the current situation, where the adversities of the pandemic are looming over us, it is necessary to facilitate dialogue between elected representatives, policy experts, and industry to create collective action. We are grateful to our trusted partners, the European Union, for their support in these times of crisis. Today's discussion will shed light on the multitudinous aspects of cooperation as envisioned by our leaders in the recently held summit. I hope it helps to engage the importance of public-private partnership and engagement between policymakers and industry in India and EU to deal with the global crisis that we are all facing. Friends, I am present here in my capacity as co-chair of the FICCI Forum of Parliamentarians, our Track 2 initiative for bipartisan outreach to elected representatives in India and abroad. Shri Bhupender Yadav, Member of Parliament and member of the BJP, is the chair of the forum. This forum ensures bipartisan voices and gender diversity. It is a privilege, honor to have ambassadors and MEPs with us for this discussion. In fact, Mr. Gozi and Ms. Galvez have been on the FICCI forum in the past. A warm welcome to you, to Mr. Mohan Guruswamy too. We look forward to an enriching discussions and hopefully the first of many to come. I wish you all pleasant deliberations and wish you good health in these times. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir. It was really nice to see you, and especially today when you're announcing the very strong initiative of the Forum of Parliamentarians, which is really becoming the democratic communication that India takes forward to Europe as against many other situations. I really hope, and I know that the President, EU-India Associate Sandra Godzi, shares the same values of the parliamentary delegation, and he came to India as one. Now, I would look forward to having remarks from Mr. Peter Rimmel, who is a resident director of the CAS Foundation. Please, Mr. Rimmel.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, this very august panel, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Many of us, before the last Saturday's EU-India summit, had very high expectations from it. These expectations were strongly fueled by the recent past, where EU and India continued to increasingly strengthen their ties, which have arguably gone beyond that of a mere strategic partnership. The question of whether all these expectations were met is something I will leave to the many policy experts present in abundance here today at this virtual event. Against the backdrop of the current trends of deglobalization, the EU-India summit also presented an opportunity to see the approaching post-corona period as a new beginning that can be used to reshape supply chains in a more diverse and sustainable way. Secondly, it has created an opening to define new pathways and forms of multilateral cooperation and partnership. And lastly, it opened up the space to strengthen cooperation between our like-minded democracies in order to establish the institutions of multilateralism right at the heart of our nations to jointly promote security, prosperity, and stability in the Indo-Pacific and the rest of our pale blue dot. So the summit has hit all the right buttons and opened a unique window in our economic, political, and social dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to focus on two key points of the EU-India summit: the digital part of the Comprehensive Connectivity Partnership and the implications of the summit for the Indo-Pacific and the EU with regards to future cooperation, peace, and prosperity. The EU-India summit confirmed what the ongoing global pandemic has taught us the hard way. Digital is no longer optional. In this context, I'm delighted to see that the EU-India summit reflected accurately this new reality by intensifying digital partnership through joint efforts in strengthening digital connectivity via submarine cables, satellite networks, whatever technical means, in view of the fact that only about 50% of all Indians had access to the internet in 2020. Whereas at the same time, India represents the second largest online market in the world, the crucial importance of such a scale-up cooperation becomes undeniable. When we talk about increased digitalization, we inevitably also end up talking about cybersecurity. The pandemic has dramatically accelerated this trend of digitalization, especially in the workplace, and made it amply clear that trust in the security of our digital lives has become indispensable. EU countries, including my home country Germany, and other open democracies such as India, are now open digital societies. If our citizens perceive their digital environment as insecure, our prosperity and social cohesion are at risk. Cyber vulnerabilities in critical national infrastructure, if left unaddressed, are serious national level risk to our societies, as critical national infrastructures are broader than we might have thought a few years ago. These days, it's not only about power grids and maybe interbank clearing systems, but also about our soft power, our democracy, our core values, our freedom of speech, our freedom of the press, our security in elections. Put all these things together, and cybersecurity today equates defending our democratic way of life. Obviously, the internet did not invent our values of freedom, solidarity, and human rights, but it constitutes a brilliant expression of this idea. Therefore, cybersecurity is about defending these shared values that we hold dear. It is about defending our free, open societies. With this in the back of our minds, it is all the more significant that in the EU-India Digital Connectivity Partnership, there have been extensive talks about the convergence of regulatory framework between our nations to ensure a high level of protection of personal data and privacy. This represents a cornerstone of the creation of globally harmonized data protection standards, which are imperative in view of the exponentially growing numbers of cybercrimes around the world. Strengthening EU-India cooperation, inter alia, why this summit was not only essential towards building more resilient and secure digital and economic ties, but even an imperative in light of the global power shifts that preceded the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, it's the rise of the Red Dragon. Recently increasing numbers of skirmishes in the Indo-Pacific made it clearer that more than ever, global cooperation and a rules-based international order need to be reinforced. Unfortunately, not all countries seem to opt for this path. This makes it all the more important that the EU and India will soon, for the first time, finalize a comprehensive strategic approach towards the Indo-Pacific, coming on the heels of the guidelines of the EU itself and member states like Netherlands, France, and Germany for the region. This will represent an important next step towards an intensified multilateral approach aimed at peace and prosperity in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I personally also consider this as a sign of a common understanding among the political decision makers that the EU can only play a significant role in promoting its fundamental values around the world if we Europeans come forward with a joint response. Let me conclude, ladies and gentlemen, by reminding you that in the view of the multiple economic, social, and geopolitical challenges in the region, this is but a small victory of diplomacy. Still, the road ahead is long, and many milestones await this cooperation, like concrete solutions to future and present challenges in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. As Nelson Mandela put it once, it always seems impossible until it is done. And now it's my great honor to yield the floor to His Excellency Sandro Gossi for his undoubtedly insightful keynote remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That was really very mind-searching and explains why we have you in India and you are really representing a think tank and putting the thoughts together where words are missing sometimes. So let me introduce you without much ado, Sandro Gossi. He is a prolific India lover and a politician who has a global overview. First of a kind in terms of the European Union and president of the EU-India Association. I've had the honor of actually planning out this event, because he felt that it was important to have a dialogue as soon as the EU-India summit takes place, because India needs it and Europe does the same. Thank you very much. Sandro Gozzi.
Thank you, Ronnie, and thank you each of you. I mean, I'm really very happy as promoter of this common endeavor, which is the EU-India Association. That I mean, we are all here today. I thanks all the present, and I think that really our initiative is very timely, very timely. In the light of what happened in Porto, but also in the light of the global challenges which are ongoing, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. Let me say a few words about the reason behind our initiative of the EU-India Association, and also, and then I would like to share with you some thought about the EU-India Summit and the way ahead for our two continents, and also in a smaller case for our association. But first of all, I would like to express all our solidarity and all our friendship to the Indian people for the difficult moment they are living. And one of the reasons why we created the EU-India Association is exactly to express and live friendship, and to embody a new way of looking at our bilateral relationship. A human way, a human approach based on mutual understanding, based on mutual initiative, based on a very open dialogue, on also things that on which we might have different views. These are the reason behind the creation of our association. We held a week ago our first governing council, and I was really impressed by the commitment and by the ambition, and also by the high professionalism of the members, both on the European side and on the Indian side. We want to focus, we want to contribute to mutual friendships and a better understanding of each other. We will focus on some issues, which has, some of them have also been tackled at the summit: the digital transition, the fight against climate change, gender equality, with modesty, but with determination. We want really to contribute, to bring a contribution to enhance our bilateral relationship, because it is important from a global perspective, because it is important from a trade perspective. After all, India is a big, the EU is India's bigger trading partner, and the European Union is the second largest destination for India exports. And trade has increased by 72% in the last decade, bringing also the European Union to be the leading investor in India, with more than 6,000 European companies. These are only some data, some figures that you all know, especially in FICCI, but that justify, if necessary, even more what we have decided to do. We want to contribute as association. I will contribute also as ambassador for Erasmus for young entrepreneurs. The European Commission has launched this project of promoting the Erasmus for young entrepreneurs. I was honored to be asked by the European Commission to be one of these of the ambassador. Also, certainly, I would also use this opportunity to include India in as one of the destinations of this Erasmus program for young entrepreneurs, with the purpose of increasing mobility and to increase also the exchange of good practice between our countries. Let me now enter into the second point, which is the subject, the main subject of our joint meeting today, the summit in Porto. The leaders, European leaders, Indian leaders, described the summit as historic, as a landmark moment, aiming at using the untapped potential of EU-India relations. And my first impression is that the summit really means progress. Real progress. I didn't have the same impression after the last summit in July 2020. At the time, I had a sense of unfulfilled, something unfulfilled was there. It's very different than the EU-India summit of the last weekend. Why? But first of all, I think that the resumption of negotiations on free trade is really the biggest news. And really, that really means progress. That can really mean progress. We look as useful. I look as useful also at the launching of separate negotiations on an investment protection agreement, on geographic denominations, and also I would like to emphasize the commitment to address market access issues, which certainly seem less challenging for moving ahead. Other headings which are very important, of course, are connectivity, as already been rightly mentioned by the previous speakers, geostrategic cooperation, climate change, just to mention the main issues that we find in the joint communique, which has been released at the end of the meeting. I really think that the summit has delivered on that conducive momentum that we were expecting. Although it is clear the real progress will have to be seen when we get to implementing it. But I think that we can dare to be optimistic. And I think that we can dare to think that the summit really paved the way to a new phase in our bilateral relations between the European Union and India. It is clear. Will it be a game changer? Question mark. It will depend on the implementation. Only future implementation will show whether this summit has been a game changer, but I'm very positive. I'm very positive also for geopolitical implications. And I mean, of course, I speak only on behalf of myself now. I mean, I don't want to commit neither the Indian members nor the European members of the association, but I think that the assertive policy of China, which is a destabilizing actor on the global scene, the new geostrategic situation in the world and in Asia, which has brought, after all, the European Union to adopt its new Indo-Pacific strategy, are all other very good reasons, strong reason, geopolitical reason, security reason, to strengthen our bilateral relationship. And I think that they have triggered somehow also, they have contributed to trigger somehow this new momentum in port. It is clear that, I mean, now in these very days, as I said at the beginning of my speech, India is under pressure due to the terrible COVID-related health emergency. As a European, as an Italian, I know what it means, because after all, I mean, the country from which I come, Italy, was under very strong pressure at the very beginning of the wave in Europe. So I think that we must be helpful. As Europeans, we must be helpful. We have already sent emergency help. We are sending 100 million worth of emergency supplies to address the current terrible situation. And I think this is what we must do. It is what friends do. And we want also to see this terrible situation to prove that we are reliable friends to the Indian people and to the Indian authorities. Of course, talking about the next phase, solidarity goes also with frankness, with openness. And I think that on human rights, on minority rights, on citizenship rights, between Europe and India, we will have to promote a very open and demanding dialogue. I mean, there cannot be unsaid things, there cannot be unsaid, untackled issues if we want really to have a positive, fruitful, and genuine dialogue between European Union and India. The last point, let me insist on the last point before to conclude, the point that already Mr. Neotia very rightly recalled. There is also a big news from the last summit and from Porto and from the last 2 months, which is the parliamentary dimension. And I think that also the parliamentary dimension has a strong potential. And I think that we cannot waste time. We really have to give a follow-up to what the President of Lok Sabha and the President of the European Parliament have said in their meeting. There is a very important parliamentary common agenda to strengthen. And we have certainly to deepen our dialogue, and we will bring a contribution as association, but certainly I will be very active in the European Parliament delegation to reach this goal. These are only some points that I want to share with you. Our common agenda is huge, and our determination as the EU association is also very strong to promote it and to do everything we can to reach our common goal. So thank you very much again, and I'm sure that this first webinar is just the beginning of a very important contribution and cooperation among us.
Thank you very much, Sandro. That was very, very enriching, important, and an important statement coming from you. I have now the pleasure of having a very interesting serial entrepreneur and a business leader from India, Vinit Mittal, who is also was known as the Solar Man of the Year in 2014 and 2012 for his significant contribution towards the solar industry. He has also been the India chair of the World Business Council of Sustainable Development Program on Renewables from Low Carbon Technology. Mr. Vinit Mittal heads a very avant-garde company, and we have him here to give a call, Avada Group, and we have him here to give his views as an industrialist in a modern new area sector. Please, Mr. Vinit Mittal. You have to unmute.
Thank you, Ronnie. Namaste to all excellencies and friends. I salute the divinity in all of you. And I thank Vicky for inviting me to share my experience of Indo-EU relationship. And I'm also part of several countries' CEO council, so have better insight. I have great respect for you and its institution. Your developmental institutions like DG, FMO and Proparco have been investor in Avada Energy for last 3 years. Together, they had invested $65 million in Avada's equity base in first round. And during COVID time, they actually came to us and helped us by investing another $40 million by encouraging us to take money from them to grow and not slow down our growth during the COVID time. And to tell you frankly, I'm immensely impressed with their desire to make positive changes in India and for Indian citizens. They are great example of institutions who want to make their investee company successful by mentoring them, encouraging them, and they are the true brand ambassador of India-EU partnership, because they not only talk, but they actually demonstrate the true friendship by investing during the tough time as well. And to give you a very good example, why I say that they like to contribute back to community, they actually pushed us to set up labor colonies like independent buildings, etc., at all our construction site. And as many of you would know, it takes less than 4 to 5 months to set up these solar plants. And we were very resistant to make that capex and do it. But they made it almost mandatory to do that. And we were not very happy about it initially. But to tell you the truth, this acted as a boon for us during COVID. We could retain most of our workers during the lockdowns when people were going back to their villages during the first phase and even today. And resultantly, what is happening is that we are able to resume our project construction much faster than our peer group. So if you look at what we were considering as a additional responsibility became a big support to us. And recently our investors, they actually also encouraged us to set up COVID hospitals and centers across Rajasthan and Maharashtra. So they are actually a good example and truly symbolizes capitalism with human face, which is actually in need of an hour. They only don't look for return, but they look for what good have you done for society? What is the social returns on investment? And that's actually echoes with what Indian culture is all about. Actually, while growing up, what Indians learn that purpose of life is fourfold: to achieve dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. So the meaning of dharma is to act virtuously and righteously. That is, it means act morally and ethically throughout one's life. And the second purpose of life, according to Indianness, is artha. Artha means pursuit for wealth and prosperity in one's life. Importantly, one must stay within the bounds of dharma while pursuing this wealth and prosperity, which actually, if you look at, that's what DEG is talking to us all about, is that you have to do your business with moral and ethical grounds. And third purpose of Indian life is to seek karma. That in simple word means as obtaining enjoyment from life. And the fourth and final meaning of life, according to Indianness, is moksha, which is enlightenment by serving humanity. So when we serve the society which gives us so much of opportunity, it's a payback time. And that's what these investors have been encouraging, and through their framework is teaching us. So which is in true way how India and EU friendship should grow. And if I have to talk about area which EU should definitely improve to further build a friendship bond, is in the area of research and debt partnership. EU has some of the best research institutes like Fraunhofer, CNES in France, the French Alternative Energies Institute, CEA, and many others, which are among top 5 research institutes across the world. They can help India to bring energy to masses at lowest possible cost. And when you bring electricity in the rural area or to developing country like us, electricity is inversely proportional to poverty. So that means your friendship is not only helping us becoming Atmanirbhar, but is also helping the world, because India is, we are 20% of the world population. And the more sustainable we become, the more sustainable would be the world. So my other suggestion would be that we always hear that banks penalize in EU for saving and keeping money. But if EU starts investing that money into India, not only you will make very good return, but it will further strengthen India-EU partnership, and it will become actually a true example of Vasudev Kutumbakam, which Mr. Nevatia was saying before, which means the whole world is one family. So when India prospers, the world prospers and becomes a better place to live. So to conclude, I would say our Sanskrit prayer which says, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukh bhagavate, which means may everyone be happy, may everyone be free from all disease, may everyone see goodness and auspiciousness in everything, may none be unhappy or distressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vinit Mittal. We really, I think we applaud this new emerging leadership of India, and you represent not just the solar man of India, but you actually bring solidarity and solarity to the discussion that we have today, besides teaching us a little bit of Indian philosophy, which will help the world to go around. And thank you so much for your kind words and inspiring indications. I now have to turn to the stalwarts and the architects of a system of the world, which is government, but within the government, diplomacy. And it's my turn to salute the ambassadors that we have on our panel today. And first and foremost, to His Excellency Ambassador Santosh Jha. It's a pleasure having you with us today, sir. Ambassador Jha was a person who has been very, very dynamic and enthusiastic in promoting the EU-India Association dialogues. I remember the first time I met him in Brussels, and we just went down to business, and he was very, very clear to move this dialogue today. And I'm happy, sir, that we're kicking off the first event under your leadership. And Mr. Astuto, His Excellency Astuto too, who will introduce a little later. But first, the word to you, Ambassador Santosh Jha, Your Excellency, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are, and namaskar. It is a great pleasure to participate in this engagement here. It's just the first working day after the Porto Summit. I would like to acknowledge the EU-India Association. I thank Mr. Simon and Mr. Sandro Gauzi for putting it all together. And I'm delighted that it has come to fruition and is holding its first meeting. Of course, the FICCI and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. We have heard a number of speakers, not just in this webinar, but before, after the Porto Summit, and it has been described as a landmark moment or a watershed moment. Some have said it's a pivotal moment. One thing is clear, that it has certainly been quite a historic one in terms of moving forward with the relationship. And it was the first time that we saw this kind of an engagement with India. India also happens to be only the second country after the US with which EU, all 27 leaders plus the presidents of the European Commission and European Council meeting together with a foreign head of state. So in that sense, it was quite a remarkable sort of an event, bringing not just the bureaucracies or the, let's say, the bureaucracies and our own bureaucracy in India, but also the full gamut of all European member states in one platform. And I think that is the way forward, because I think the relationship between India and EU also has an interstate element, and a lot of what we do together will get a lot of benefit if we do it this way. It's easy to call it a pivotal moment and remarkable moment, but there were some very significant decisions that occurred at the summit, and for which the work had begun quite some time ago. I think the seeds were sown at the July summit last year, when the leaders clearly showed a greater intent to move forward with all aspects of the relationship. A lot of people have spoken about the trade and investment agreements. It was the high-level dialogue between the EU Commissioner and the Indian Trade Minister that was kick-started, launched at the July summit that enabled it to happen. In the last 3 to 4 months, the dialogue itself has taken place twice, more than a dozen technical meetings in between, and it came out with a very concrete set of initiatives that are all well known. But let me underline the more important ones: the one to have a separate agreement on trade, a separate agreement on investment, and a separate agreement on geographical indications. We have all along said that these are 3 very important elements, that they will be agreements that are mutually reinforcing, they are interlinked, and we are interested in early conclusion of all the 3 agreements at the same time. I think it makes sense to do so. The kind of political commitment that is there provides the right timing as well. And I think there will be a lot of speculation on how much we can do and how far we can go and how quickly we can go on this path. But I think the intent is very strong. Most of what I can tell you at this time is that we are immediately moving forward to set up the first set of meetings to initiate this process. I think there were 3-4 more big outcomes. The one that there was a document that was also issued was on connectivity, which had a lot of many positive elements. This is something that is very central to the Indian foreign policy, and we have seen the EU beginning to emphasize on it significantly in recent times, beginning with the first such partnership with Japan. The connectivity partnership covers 4 elements: energy, digital, transport, and people-to-people contacts. It talks about partnerships in 3 dimensions. One is on the principles and the values that it will foster, which are very, very significant in itself. And there is the India-EU partnership directly working in each other's connectivity and then working together in 3rd countries. The second element that I would emphasize, and which came out quite clearly, was naturally at this time the COVID-related healthcare, where it was clear that there is a lot of common ground to work together on a number of areas. But most importantly, this element of solidarity and cooperation was recognized. The fact that the EU is coming forth and helping India in these difficult times. And it was recalled that, it must be recalled that, India has in the past played a significant role, first by sending medical supplies to 150 countries last year, including to many countries in Europe, and then subsequently through the Vaccine Maitri program. And this is an area that I think will continue to occupy us as a priority area for some time to come. The 4th one that I would mention in this list is the climate change. It is an area that is something where I clearly heard EU leaders say that India's recent progress has been quite remarkable. And I was glad that this was had registered, because just about 6-7 months ago, I felt that there was not enough recognition of this. The fact that the Prime Minister himself emphasized that this is a very fundamental way of building up India, create a sustainable and a green India, and being the first country in that regard to develop in this manner. So this is an area where I think there is a lot of scope for cooperation. We had the first meeting just before the Porto summit of the under the Clean Energy Partnership, which was announced in 2016. But you would, it's hard to imagine that it took 5 years to hold the first meeting, which took place last month. And some very good outcomes from that, as well as our Clean Energy Partnership is expected to go forward. EU is an actor in India's initiatives like the International Solar Alliance and in the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, where it has agreed to join forces with India. And then there was the broader political element, the idea of moving forward on stronger political and security ties, on moving to more defense cooperation, on the fact that we had an Indo-Pacific strategy coming out from the EU just before the Porto summit, and the recognition of in the joint statement that there are many common elements allowing us to work together. I heard yesterday the External Affairs Minister say that we would welcome EU in our region of the world. I think connectivity partnership provides that basis, but also maritime security dialogue that we launched at the July 2020 summit and the first round, which took place in January last year, provides the context. So I think it's a very good overall outcome. Many significant outcomes. I think for my friend who's listening in and who'll be speaking after me, my counterpart, Ambassador Hugo Astuto, and for me, the task is cut out. I mean, we have a lot of work to do going forward. As some speakers said, that it is good to announce things, but to get to the ground running and start working on it is another. And we are determined to do that very quickly, early, and bring concrete outcomes in the near future. So thank you so much for the invitation. And I also thank all of you for participating in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Jha. As you said, today being the first working day after the summit, and I must say here with all admiration that you have been setting the tone and we've been taking from you. And at FICCI, with the presence of President Nyotia, who is actually the co-chair of the Forum of Parliamentarians, me and my colleagues, Manish and all of us, we look forward to your leadership. We're trying to establish the EU-India Forum of Parliamentarians under your guidance. And we really think it's an important step because even these are things that will help in the track one dialogue. And we would be more than happy in competitive environment to really participate. And that's the message from FICCI, that we didn't want to waste any time. We just wanted to start the dialogue because we believe in the process forward, and we look forward to your support in a continued way. Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to have a great honor of welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Hugo Astuto, who we really have had the pleasure and the honor of knowing in his previous avatar and now as Ambassador of the European Union to India. All I can say is Ambassador Astuto is a very quiet and efficient. It's almost like the electric car. He's very silent and he's very, very clearly ahead on the efficiencies, and we look forward to having your support. Thank you very much for joining us. The floor to you, Ambassador Astuto.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me at this meeting. So let me thank all the organizers, the friends from FICCI, from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the EU-India Association. Let me recognize all the distinguished members of Parliament from national parliaments and from the European Parliament, and my colleague Ambassador Santosh Shah. Actually, the ground has been set already by so many eminent speakers before myself, so I think I could be silent also on this occasion, like the electric car, and simply move over. But let me say just a few things just to confirm that the meeting has indeed been a turning point, I believe, in the strategic partnership. Many observers say so, and I think that's a fair assessment. Here in India, the emphasis is particular on the resumption of negotiation for trade and investment agreements and on the connectivity partnership. But as my colleague Ambassador Jha said earlier, actually there are a number of cooperative ventures which will follow up to this meeting. The meeting has taken place against the background of the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, unfortunately, India is taking the brunt of the storm, and the European Union has been trying to help. We have activated the European Civil Protection Mechanism, and we have been delivering for the past week oxygen-related equipment, health material, and antiviral medicine. And as my colleague said, actually, but that's an expression of solidarity which follows the help that India has been forthcoming in giving in the past few months to Europe and the rest of the world. It's the lesson we can draw is that indeed solidarity must be our compass when it comes to dealing with this global challenge. Among the major deliverables, the list has already been taken, has already been made, but let me recall here again the decision to resume negotiation on trade and investment agreements, and in parallel to address market access issues, which is a very concrete aspect of our conversation, which I think is of interest to both FICCI and to European business. And also to start a negotiation on geographical indications and to parliamentarians and insiders like yourself. I mean, this does not escape your attention. I mean, how important the issue of geographical indication is for the European Union. And we also set up working groups to deal with a number of topical issues such as reform of the World Trade Organization, regulatory issues, and the topic of resilient supply chains, which has come to the fore so dramatically now in the course of the crisis. Now we understand how important it is to have secure and resilient supply chains among like-minded partners. And in this respect, I would like also to echo what my colleague said, in the sense of what you see now is a number of seeds planted at the time of the last summit coming to maturity. I mean, at the last summit, we created this high-level dialogue between the Executive Vice President Dombrovskis and Minister Goyal, precisely to inject momentum into our conversation on trade and investment. And I'm happy to say that it worked out well. So that's also a lesson for the future. It's important that we keep these channels of communication at political level open and regular. That's how you achieve momentous change. Another deliverable which is attractive considerable attention is the joint statement of connectivity. These partnerships that we are developing, it's indeed an important achievement, and my colleague has already described the fact it's a broad endeavor that we are setting in motion. Connectivity has to be intended in a broad sense. It's about infrastructure, it's about the digital transition, it's about people-to-people contact. But the essence of it is that what brings India and the EU together is the fact that we share the same principles when it comes to connectivity. Connectivity must be sustainable, fiscally and environmentally. It must be transparent. And the role of the private sector is key. And significantly, I think the day before the summit, we signed, the European Investment Bank has signed another few contracts which are aimed at participating in the story of the development of sustainable infrastructure in India. And I'm sure that the European Investment Bank will also prove a key tool in the implementation of this connectivity partnership in the future, in India and in the region and beyond. The deliverable on connectivity also can be seen against the backdrop of the Indo-Pacific, of the new focus on the Indo-Pacific that the European Union is developing. You're all familiar with the Council conclusions recently adopted, and with the fact that we are now working on an Indo-Pacific strategy. So it's about the Council conclusions were very clear. I mean, the European Union is a stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific. We are a major trading partner. We're a major investor. We have an interest in the prosperous and peaceful development of the region. And again, what brings us together with India is there's a commonality of values. We want a cooperative approach to international relations, respect for international law, notably the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, to be at the foundation of the future of the development of the Indo-Pacific. So I think that's another topical issue that bring together like-minded partners such as India and the EU. Climate, the twin priorities of the green and digital transitions were also coming to the fore in the discussion among leaders, and will keep us busy, Santosh and I, in the coming weeks and months. As Santosh said, I mean, we managed to restart the climate dialogue right before the leaders meeting, and I could hear all the European leaders and Prime Minister Modi say indeed that this can be one of the most important dimensions of our relationship, and that's very true. In all its aspects, we need to prepare together for COP26, and COP26 must be a success. And we need to work together for the greening of our respective economic models. And that's where obviously the digital transition is also very relevant. It's an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to the greening of our economies. And then it's per se an essential priority. I mean, we want the digital horizon to be developed in an environment which is competitive, which fosters innovation, but which is also human-centric, that respects individual rights and freedom. And that's also where the issue of regulatory convergence is particularly relevant, but when two large democratic space such as India and the EU come together. So we shall work together on issues such as data protection and on issues very relevant for the security of our networks. Well, we all read about the rollout of 5G. That's certainly important. And there are a number of other dimensions where the EU and India are facing the same challenges. So it's only natural that we come together also to look at the solution. So we have also reiterated our intention to have to set up an artificial intelligence joint working group and to have a digital high-level forum very soon to bring also business together, to bring the startups together. It's not just a government endeavor, but it must be bottom up and involve the private sector. We are both open market economies, and that's very relevant. So in conclusion, I think that we agree. I mean, another sign of convergence that we could have shared our speaking notes, Ambassador Jai and myself. So as you can see, indeed, we read from the same hymn sheet, and we have set, I think, the foundation for a considerable strengthening of our strategic partnership in all dimensions. And it's important for us, it's important for the EU, it's important for India, but it's also important for the international community because indeed, I think as Prime Minister Modi said, the EU-India strategic partnership can offer a force multiplier for the achievement of global common goods in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Asuto. Very, very important words, and convergence is the key word of the moment, not only between our two honorable ambassadors, but also setting the tone for the discussion between EU and India. And now I have the pleasure of bringing on not just by gender equality, but really a voice, a woman who has been who is a member of the National Assembly's Women's Rights Delegation in France. She's also the president of the French-India Friendship Group and delegation, and she's a member of the French Parliament, and I understand who has a feeling towards India, shares the values, and we really are happy to see her every time she is in an India dialogue. She has her own references, and I look forward to listening to you, Madam Celine. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be amongst you today, just after this important summit. As you mentioned, I sit on several committees in the French National Assembly, and including the most important one regarding our conversation is the French-Indian Parliamentary Friendship Group since 2017. And I'm extremely pleased to discuss the EU-India Summit. Maybe on some conclusions that I want to share with you, we can draw in the field of education or culture or women's rights, because as you mentioned, I'm really keen on gender equality. And I think that both India and France have something to say to the world about that. These topics are of particular interest to me, and I think we can infuse more and more the dialogue that we have with Indian parliamentarians or firms or members of civil society. And this summit, this EU-India summit, is the occasion to raise awareness about what is existing already and what can be put forward too. The summit set the stage for a comprehensive and mutually beneficial trade agreement between our two geographic spaces. But it also highlights the importance of multilateralism. And dialogue and cooperation must be held in this multipolar world. So here we are really attached to a rule-based and balanced world. And we know that, especially regarding what are the challenges that we both in EU and India are facing, and not only about sanitary or health challenges, but also democratic or technological one, we have to extend this conversation to our European and Indian partners. In this slide, I am delighted to see that in the joint statement, there is a specific reference to the field of education. For example, the EU and India will seek to present positive cooperation on higher education, including Erasmus+, which is this European great program about student exchanges to foster cultural dialogue. It's not only about education, it's also about cultural dialogue. And I think that the exchange of information and resources between Europe and India should be raised in higher education field. These exchanges must be facilitated through migration and mobility programs. And we are at this stake very, maybe in something different. As the world is facing COVID situation, we are just thinking about how people can be part of a country and go to another country, and we must really think another way, maybe mobility, but we have to foster mobility. It's not because there is this situation in the world that we can raise frontiers. We have to make frontiers open to people connection, because in this way we can find solution to the world challenges. And with the high-level dialogue on migration and mobility, we will foster people-to-people exchanges. This strategic cooperation in the field of education must also lead to something else. I mean, in research. We have made some progress. Good progress was achieved under the India-EU Science and Technology Agreement. And both India and the EU, we are strong in this science and technology, and we'll be stronger together. India and the EU must go further in advancing cooperation and mobility on research and innovation in all the field of innovation. If today we are really keen on health innovation or digital innovation, I mean, there is also fields of innovation that we have to put forward to the interest of EU and India, but to the world too. I think also we have these major fields I want to put a light on is cultural exchanges. It's part of the trade. There is a cultural and creative industry that are both really, really important in our countries. What I've witnessed last month, I was with Jean-Yves Le Drian, which is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I was with him in New Delhi, and we put a light on a specific cooperation in the cinema. It was between France and India, but I mean the cinema and more largely the cultural industry. We have to put forward more cooperation because we are really strong in major fields like music, but also video games. Last year I was in Mumbai in the Ubisoft offices, and you know Ubisoft is a French enterprise, but all over the world it is the fourth major firm about video games, and we need India to put all the intelligence and creativeness and to speak to the world with video games. I really think that we have to build something between EU and India in this field. Last but not least, as the EU and India work together to create a safer and more prosperous democratic world, we cannot forget women's rights and economic empowerment. And the EU and India together constitute the greatest democratic sphere in the world. EU and India is the greatest democratic sphere in the world, and we must really raise that to the other part of the world. We believe in democratics. Together, we are almost 2 billion people living in democratic spaces, and we should say more to the world that we are really attached to democracy. And in this almost 2 billion people, half of it are women. And we should really be happy or hopeful that the joint statement confirms India and the EU commitment toward promoting and protecting gender equality in all spheres. During my last visit last month in India, I met with several NGOs, and they're working in women's rights empowerment or civil society empowerment. And I think that this vibrant civil society in India plays a crucial role in the promotion of human rights, and they must be supported and listened by all of us because it's the protection of democracy depending on that too. So I will finish with one word about a major event which will be held virtually in next July. It's the Generation Equality Forum, jointly held by France and Mexico. It's not the EU and the India, but I'm sure you will have special attention on it because it will foster multilateral dialogue surrounding women's rights and gender equality in all the world. So I hope that many European countries and India will be part of it. So thank you very much. And I sincerely hope this summit is just the beginning of the EU-India partnership. And I know that the EU-India Association held by Sandro Gozzi will be a major support of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Celine Calves. It was great and interesting to hear you. And we assure you both at the EU-India Association and at FICCI that we will be counting on you to be an active and operative member of cooperation, especially in the themes that are important to you and making the difference of women's rights and gender equality and everything else, including education. Thank you. Now I have the great pleasure to introduce one of a very outstanding foreign affairs expert, and so much so a member of the Italian Parliament, and Valentino Valentini, who is, I would say, a grassroots politician, because he starts off by being a mayor of a town, and then moves on his political career and becomes advisor to one of the long-standing Italian prime ministers on foreign policy. Very quiet and efficient, and has actually displayed Italian foreign policy in a big way, and now happens to be the advisor, has the pleasure of being the advisor to the Speaker of the Italian Parliament. And Valentino Valentini is very strongly supported India, and so I have the honor of introducing him. Valentino Valentini, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, and I am humbled by your introduction. That I don't know whether it does me justice or too much justice. I will try to live up to this presentation. I will not go over the many points that have already been raised by the previous speakers, who better than myself highlighted all of the results that were achieved and all the potentialities that are still untapped in this relationship between the European Union and India. What I would like to do is to probably touch one aspect that concerns probably Italy somehow in its capacity as the current chair of the G20. G20 is another of those forums where our cooperation should become more outstanding. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that on the 21st of May, 2021 in Rome, Italy and the European Commission will co-host a Global Health Summit. That's probably one of the occasions where, you know, they're symbolic, they're important, but the summit is an opportunity for G20 and invited leaders, head of international organizations, representatives, especially for the world at large, to share the lesson learned from G20. Actually, they said lesson learned. Now, I'm afraid that it's lesson we're all learning, and that we will keep learning for years ahead. In that context too, I think that our cooperation is very important, and you know, all the issues that we discussed could also find resonance in this context and in this forum. Over above this specific instance, of course, there's going to be the G20 meetings, both at ministerial level and in terms of the overall summit, that I hope will be able to reflect this how should I put it? This renewed friendship and this greater awareness of the common interest that we share, not only in terms of trade, but also in terms of a similar way of approaching our problems. The G20 is based, frankly, the title of G20 is what we've been discussed so far, is people, planet, and prosperity. These are the main issue we all facing together. And what is good about what I heard so far, and what is good about the potentiality between our two parts of the world, is that we share, how should I put it, certainly a more profound, a more spiritual, if that still exists, way of approaching things. I think we have not only a modern, outstanding tradition. We have the technology institutes that were previously discussed by the Mr. Vinit Mittal, and I was very pleased that he highlighted the role that Europe can play in this field. But I would like to stress what I've heard so far in all the speeches. We have a similar look on what is going on the world level. We have also common interests. It is time we put them on the table. It is time we become consistent about them. And I'm very happy about all the tables that have been opened and that will continue and further this discussion. And I'm sure as time develops, these two parts of the world will find themselves to have so much in common and so many interests that our task now as parliamentarians, because we all have our task, you know, business people, diplomats, members of government, by time has come to put finally some concrete initiatives, and I think that it's a long marathon. Like all marathon, it starts with the first steps. I hope we as an association and we all can contribute our steps to this global marathon together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really very, very important. And I personally hope to welcome you to India very soon as all this is done. Valentino, this would be a good part to complete, and having some of you over here in our country. And now I have the pleasure of introducing you to another India loving woman, a policy leader. Stefania Benalia is the associate professor and researcher at the CHAPS. She has been in India, just to tell you, from 2014 to 17, and she was placed here and looked into the EU-India Defense Cooperation for the Istituto Affari Internazionali. And at the same time, she has been nominated as top 40 under the Under 40 EU-India leader and experts, selection of 100 Italian women in economy and international affairs. Nothing much more to say, Stefania, except that I've heard you many times, and we would want to bring your wisdom online today, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you also for the kind introduction. Today, I'm really happy to discuss the outcome of Saturday's EU-India's leaders meeting, because I also share the assessment that it was a watershed moment, marking really the end of an era of joint statement and entering the one of joint action. And hopefully there's no coming back on that. We've heard already from previous speakers all the many good things that were brought about from this meeting, ranging from the advancement on cooperation on digital, on climate change, around the building of global health preparedness and resilience around COVID-19, and the importance of, in the context of the Indo-Pacific, and of course the resumption of the FTA negotiations. So I'm not going to dwell into all of those very good achievements, but I'm going actually to focus on the one thing that I think is the most prominent, also given the presence of today's audience, which is rather with a strong presence of private sector, and that is the connectivity partnership. The honorable ambassadors previously already described a little bit what it contains, so I will rather give a reading of why it is so promising. It is, right now, the EU is indeed understanding that connectivity is an important foreign policy tool, and the implementation of this tool will have to be done in a completely new way, with a strong complementarity between private and public sector, and this will really change the way foreign policy is implemented as well as received. But it's also a huge opportunity to establish a new way of public-private cooperation. But first, let's take a step back and see where does this connectivity partnership come from and what it means. Of course, connectivity is in the DNA of the EU. The EU is founded itself on the concept of free movement of people and capitals. But for a long time, it intended this only within its own borders. It was only with the coming of the Chinese BRI that connectivity actually was intended as a foreign policy tool. So in 2018, the EU adopted the connectivity strategy for Asia, which is the first creation of a strategy for this purpose, with the aim of providing a sustainable and value-based alternative to the BRI. It was then consolidated into the EU-Japan Connectivity Partnership the following year, indeed the first one, and from which, of course, the connectivity partnership that we have in front of us, of course, learned a great deal. This year, little by little, we had a little bit of political traction that came, and we've seen it that in January 2021, the European Parliament adopted a report calling for the expansion of the connectivity strategy for Asia into a global one, really getting the sense that connectivity is indeed a foreign policy tool, and we need to learn how to use it to the best advantage of all of us. And so here we are. We have in front of us a connectivity strategy, and we have to understand what to make out of it and why this is so important today rather than in the future, in months to come. When it comes to connectivity, of course, we all know that the size of the task is huge. We are talking trillions. So there is no way that a single actor can take up the challenge alone. It cannot be done by tax dollars, which is another huge difference. It can only be done through investment capable of creating returns and therefore stimulating the private participation. So we need to forge the right partnership, private and public, to create an innovative financial system creating returns applicable in the foreign policy. And that is the great nuity and where I see this great potential So far, the foreign policy priorities have been implemented mostly through public sector, with somewhat, a degree, but still a minimal participation of private sector. But that is not going to work in this context. So we need to change the way we define the foreign policy and the way we implement it, and how the private sector implements the foreign policy priorities, and how, how this will interplay, because of course the private sector might not be fully aligned with the conception and the way the public sector sees and interprets the foreign policy. So of course it will be a complicated challenge ahead. In addition to all of this, who does what, where the money comes from, and how do you achieve that, the modalities? These are very complicated questions that so far have been kind of like held by the public sector, because the public sector was the main implementer of foreign policy. But now we are opening up to this private and public partnership with a greater degree of the private sector. And so we have to fine tune how all of these dynamics will come into play. But this is, of course, hugely challenging, but this is also a huge opportunity to coordinate and also to improve the actorness, because the way this has an impact also has an impact on the way the foreign policy is perceived. Because of course, the private sector, which you can relate to, which is implementing a foreign policy, brings immediately foreign policy much closer to you, and it can have a much better impact, and it will be received in a much better way if done correctly, obviously. Of course, connectivity, kind of like, as the name says, coordinates the actors, coordinates what member states already do, the various areas of operation, and open the doors to partner cooperation. So it's not really adding something, but rather bringing coordination into what is already into play, and creating a framework for the future actions to actually happen in a coordinated way. It's a really a broad concept, but indeed it sets the framework, as the ambassador said before. Of course, this a word of special attention comes for the role of the partners in the region, because kind of the Indo-Pacific is very important for a number of reasons, which I'm very happy to detail further in the Q&A, and because this is one of the very first implementation of this the dynamics. So the whole world is literally watching us and how this will unfold. So it has to be done right. Plus the communication is crucial in all of this, in making sure that foreign policy has a different reading from everybody. And with this, I think that I will stop here. I have many more things to say, but I don't want to monopolize the stage. But I'm more than happy to actually give a reading of how we went in today, more details on the connectivity partnership, other deliverables later on in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very effective, and connectivity it is and will be. I'm very sure that all the players on today's panel are equally interested to take forward concrete projects of this kind. And here I would like to mention, particularly because in the trade area, this is a time where I see, because I'm on the European side and the Indian side, and I see in advisory roles all the time, there is a big request. Vinit Mittal was a good example of European investment and responsible investment towards India. Peter Rimel's presence is also towards that end. But I can assure you there are a lot of companies in Europe which are really cutting edge technology bearing companies, but who need investment from India. And India could be the right country, because it's the transfer of technology to responsible areas. It's how to move knowledge to the right people who will democratically protect and preserve. And India has those elements. And only thing is, I dread to say that there are no mechanisms, or shall we say, we need more mechanisms, maybe a fund, which I proposed in various other webinars. And I'd love to discuss it with anybody, because right now, in many countries in Europe, investment is being sought for very, very interesting return on investment, and also in terms of value for both the sides. I now call upon one of the experts from the Indian side, Mr. Mohan Guruswamy. He has been a policy expert. He's been an advisor. He's been advisor to our finance minister. He's an author. He's a prolific writer, and he has some very good opinions and advice to offer us today. Very happy to have you. The floor to you, Mr. Guruswamy.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting conversations out here this afternoon. You know, the EU is is a work in process for India for a long time. India made its political commitment to the EU in the 60s when it opened a mission in Brussels, anticipating a day when the EU will come together as a political entity. Unfortunately, events in the last few years with Brexit, etc., postponed that, I think, and I'm glad that the bits are being picked up again. And EU, after 8 years, there's been a dialogue between India and the EU. But you know, I'm always amazed that there's a little naivety in the relationship between Indians and the Europeans when it comes to platforms like this. Investment always flows for a return. It seldom flows for altruism. There's an element of that in the dialogue. Indians, like you said, Mr. Simon, that invest in England and in Europe. Matter of fact, India's investments are on par with Europe's EU's investment in India, and little more than Britain's investment in India. India is a net exporter of capital as far as Europe is concerned. Now, what India needs is to get its act together domestically, to become attractive to capital to come in. The biggest source of foreign capital to India, even now, is Indian money. 68% of our FDI is Indian-owned money going into various havens, from Singapore to Cyprus. And then. So India must start looking good to Indians when foreign capital will start coming in. I heard one of the European delegates speak about insisting on certain standards. Now, EU's biggest investment is in Brazil, and next is China, and India's 68 billion euros. Remind you, I don't think we need to improve on our human rights and human relations and values over Brazil and China. We're doing okay compared to the EU. We have our problems, but these kind of things get backs up because no country is going to alter its domestic politics or situation to suit foreign capital. That's not going to happen. I remember 2 years ago, Dr. Nimel's predecessor had arranged for me to visit Germany to speak to an investors group. And the head of Daimler-Benz put a list of conditions for India to fulfill. This was a meeting in the Indian Embassy. And I said, it won't happen. After the end of the day, you're a car company. And when you will invest in India, in spite of malaria, cholera, typhoid, because there are profits to be made and there's a market. So I think we should both grow up in our expectations. Europeans will not invest in India because they like us or we speak English. Europeans will invest in India if there's an economic opportunity. For that, we've got to get our act together. And I'm glad that FICCI's taken the initiative here. And FICCI is at the forefront in trying to get us, de-bureaucratize our systems, to speed up our systems, to make industry profitable for Indians also, and investment profitable for Indians also. So I think this is very important that this dialogue goes on. But one of your speakers, the lady from Ms. Calvez, spoke about tie-up with education. That is very interesting. I think this is where India needs a new inspiration. education, European institutions, have very high standards, and are more practical and attuned to a little more altruism than American institutions. I myself am a product of the US education system, but I have a lot of time for the European system. There's much to be acquired and gained from that, and I hope your association picks that up. Finally, there is the issue of the internet. It's amazing how something which started in Europe, and Europe lost control of it. Today, Facebook, Google, all are American corporations. They control the airwaves. They dictate what can be said in it and what can't be said. We are under the threat of having to lose our voice. Europe, our question of data. European data is also going up. European data is also being manipulated. I think these are areas of common interest. We need to work together on that. And I'm hopeful that you will take this topic up for discussion, that you will have some more dialogue on this. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goswami. That was quite pinpointing some of the issues that still have to be settled between the parts, but it also gives an opening to the challenges that are being faced today. And I think with that, we've had a great discussion, and I very quickly would like to throw the floor open while thanking my colleagues Manish, Rohit Sharma, and Sushma, and Anita, and all of us. Here is a Q&A session, and if there are questions and answers, we could quickly go into it so that together we can give it a nice wrap up, and at the same time give this session a very concrete cut and meaning business and meaning concrete activities, so we can open to any questions very shortly if somebody has. It could be anybody from the members of the speaker group. Otherwise, any questions that may be there.
I think participants will have to place the questions in the chat box.
Yes, I see.
Pankaj's hand is up, I think.
Please go ahead. Go ahead. Did you want to ask a question?
Pankaj, you're on mute. You're on mute, Pankaj.
No, I was looking for the chat box, and by mistake I clicked on that to see whether the questions were coming in or not. Otherwise, we should just ask the panelists to give.
I think we have a question now. We have a question now, Ronnie.
Ronnie, there's a question, yes.
Sharkant Roy.
Okay, so I think we will go to that question that has come up now. And please go ahead if you want to raise the question or mention it.
Ronnie, you would have to ask the question, because the participants can only just put in the questions in the Q&A format.
Yes, I can see that now, so the question that is coming up is whether there are the amount of investment from the European Union and the timeline to be earmarked towards several EU-India investments through G2G and also B2B process. The question is also a suggestion where they would like somebody, a member of the European Parliament, if they can explain how do you see the amount of investment or timeline to be earmarked, or and which could be used for agriculture, healthcare, education, manufacturing, communication, especially with reference to the development of 600,000 smart villages that will help India to overcome the tragic COVID-19 effect. And this will be the key to prevent population migration as well as pollution. This has become all the more important for timely event that can align with the post-COVID recovery process and help the entire country. It's a very interesting question, but basically saying how would European Union want to engage on the investment through G2G and the B2B process? If any of the members of Parliament would like to take up the question, or Stefania or Mr. Rimel, the floor is open to you. I would ask Mr. Rimel, who's here as part of the think tank, whether you have a comment to make on the European investment towards India in that sense of G2G or.
Not really, it would not be our specialty. Of course, I would be a strong promoter to increase that one. First of all, both of our, the EU and India, of course, as we mentioned several times, share certain values, and that those values also speak somehow for investors' certainty. That is what investors also need and what they might not find in other competing countries. So I think that is one of the strongest facts to make investment in India attractive for European companies, and maybe that's something what should be promoted. I know in Germany there is this promotion of the Invest in India Mittelstand initiative. Most of the successful German companies, the big names are known, but the real backbone of the German economy, likewise in India, is the small and medium-sized enterprises, and maybe that is also the sector we should look at.
Yes, there's one more question on a general question, if there's any clear impediments, the free trade agreement that somebody would like to flag and discuss, is a question that's come up with one of the Q&A. Professor Umu Salma Baba of JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, is asking this question in a timely manner for the trade agreement. What are the impediments? Anything that somebody would like to flag off that we could talk about it? Go ahead, Stefania, please.
Thank you. Rather than pointing at concrete impediments, I would just put it in the context, that I think that what will happen with this negotiation will happen in parallel tracks with what happens between the negotiation of India with the UK. Of course, unsurprisingly, the timing is, in the same week it has been announced the reopening of the negotiation with the EU and with the UK. Well, yeah, 1 week, the same week. So of course this will be happening in parallel tracks. So I guess mirroring the situation, we will know quite well what happened based on what the former EU partner is also experiencing. At the end of the day, there is a little track record for the EU in terms of, for India in terms of negotiating trade deals. We all know that India, the most recent happening in trade front was the pulling out of RCEP, which of course was a strong signal for everybody, India included, but the Europeans as well, the UK as well. So we will have to see how this dynamic comes forward. On the EU side, I would also say that the trade negotiations are getting, and possibly rightly so, I don't know, I'm not one putting judgment there, but they're getting more complex because we are understanding very well that the trade agreement sits in a very strong geopolitical and geoeconomic context. So trade agreements are not only a matter of bilateral trades, it's a much more complex issue. So they're getting all this layer of extra richness into these trade deals, which will maybe not fasten up the negotiations, but for sure enforce and strengthen the negotiation, because the outcome that will come out of this agreement, of this joint agreement, will certainly be a much more sustainable one. So I have all my promises. Of course, at the end of the day, I mean, negotiations are happening only now. So only now they will really open the book and they will say exactly what will happen. But we all know that if they decided to reopen the negotiation, it means that certain assurances and certain roadblocks have been removed. So they know that they can actually move forward. relatively smooth. And so it will, I expect, of course, certain bumps in the road. It would be impossible to expect otherwise, but I don't think there will be hurdles that will hamper the overall negotiation as it happened in 2013.
May I add something? I agree with Stefania that certain hurdles have been removed, but looking at it, the obstacles, what were there those days when the negotiations closed, are still there. So maybe we also have to look at, be it agriculture or other sectors, and that is why maybe we have to have a look at it, maybe not a totally holistic approach that covers all sectors, but try to focus on those where there is agreement and put them into working condition and then work on the other ones. So maybe I would this time use a approach of settling chapter by chapter and putting it into force rather than covering everything, and it may take another 20 years till we come to results.
Thank you. I think it's really touching the point of the way forward, how to move this forward. There's no doubt that on the policy side, government to government side, there is a very strong, clear willingness and wanting to bridge the gaps between the nations. I think on the business side, both track 2 and institutional support, and institutions like FICCI and now the EU-India Association, other bodies, they are playing their roles, and they all have to step up to the plate. But I would like to flag off one thing, that there is an issue on the last mile connectivity, which really needs to put together the entry into different countries, both India entry and Europe entry. Probably that's where some of the work needs to be done. But I think we've had a very good session today with a lot of time, precious time being spent by important people. I think business leaders and political leaders will have to come together now and play a common part, so that the business, which means the private business and the public sectors, they both move together in both the countries. Connectivity gives those answers. Programs like Erasmus for businessmen that Sandro Gozzi mentioned can bring the two sides together. And personally, I would like to thank FICCI, President Neotia, Mr. Dilip Chenoy, Manish Singhal, Rohit Sharma, Sushma, and Anita, and many colleagues who've been working on this, and the EU-India Association Secretary General Matteo Ribaldi, and also Alfredo Capuso from Brussels, and the team of Sandro Gozzi that put together this session. We would like each one of you to participate and to be with us and to take this conversation to the next level. And the faster we do it, we'd be very happy to have you all together. But thank you for the honor, and thank you very much to everybody. Looking forward. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Ronnie, thank you so much. Wonderfully done. Vinitji, thanks, Dan.
Valentino, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Valentino. Thank you, Mr. Ramel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramel.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Have a good day.
Okay. Sister, thank you.
Bitteschön.
Bye-bye. Grazie, Valentino. Molto gentile.